Welcome to Hannity. I'm Jeanine Pirro, in tonight for Sean. Get ready for one of the most contentious congressional hearings ever. Peter Strzok has officially been subpoenaed by the Judiciary Committee and will now be forced to testify in public next Tuesday, July 10th. As most of you probably know, Peter Strzok is the corrupt anti-Trump FBI investigator who played an important role in clearing Hillary Clinton of all charges back in 2016 and then subsequently became a key investigator in the Trump-Russia witch hunt. Strzok was ultimately removed from Mueller's investigation after text messages revealed the extent of his anti-Trump bias. This includes a text to his girlfriend, Lisa Page, on July 31, 2016, just days after Hillary's investigation ended and Trump's investigation started. His text read, quote, "Damn, this feels momentous because this matters." The other one did too, but that was to ensure we didn't F something up. This matters because this matters. So super glad to be on this voyage with you. And look at this exchange. Days later, on August 8, 2016, Lisa Page writes, quote, "Trump's not ever going to become president, right? Right?" Strzok responded, no, he's not. We'll stop it. Then, on August 15, 2016, Strzok told Page, "There's no way he gets elected, but I'm afraid we can't take that risk. It's like an insurance policy in the unlikely event you died before you're 40. This matters. We'll stop it. It's like an insurance policy in case he gets elected." These are all comments from two senior FBI officials responsible for investigating a candidate for president. But there's more. Look at this. Way back in 2015, Strzok texted Page, "Bernie Sanders is an idiot like Trump." On February 12, 2016, from Page, "He simply cannot be president." Strzok texts back, "Oh, Trump's abysmal." Then on March 3rd, 2016, "Trump is a loathsome human. He's awful. Hillary should win 100 million to 0. Now, our members of Congress will have a chance to hold Strzok's feet to the fire in public. But we're also learning tonight that Strzok's lawyer is firing back at Republicans on the House Judiciary and Oversight Committees regarding his closed-door testimony with them last week. And joining us now with more from Washington is Catherine Herridge. Catherine?
Judge, the lawyer for FBI agent Peter Strzok is accusing Republicans of twisting and leaking his client's testimony. Strzok did not answer our questions or any other news organization during his 11 hours on Capitol Hill last week, with 90 minutes in a classified session. During the transcribed interview with lawmakers and staff on the House Oversight and Judiciary Committees, Strzok refused to answer some questions, citing the ongoing Russia case and advice of FBI counsel. According to correspondence with the House committees confirmed by Fox News, Strzok's lawyer says his client initially expressed an interest in testifying publicly, but it was lawmakers who wanted the closed-door session as a first step. Quote, "We know what's in store. In the next hearing, they will ask Special Agent Strzok many of the same questions and then seize on any tiny inconsistencies to prove that he perjured himself or made false statements. Given that the committee has proven it is playing political games, violating both our trust and its own rules, it no longer makes sense for us to keep playing along." Last week, the FBI Director Christopher Wray and the Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein got some tough questioning about Strzok, his text messages, and whether political bias infected the FBI investigations.
You have Peter Strzok. He opens up the counterintelligence investigation against Trump's campaign the end of July. Then a week later, this text message, "He ain't going to be president. We'll stop it." Then the next week, the infamous insurance policy text message where he says, "We can't take the risk of a Trump presidency. You need an insurance policy." The American people see that? Doesn't that undermine the whole integrity of the actions of people like Peter Strzok?
Yes, Congressman, that obviously is highly inappropriate.
The House Judiciary Committee issued a subpoena today for Agent Strzok to publicly testify on the 10th. Judge?
Catherine, thanks so much. And while we anxiously await Peter Strzok's time in the hot seat, another set of subpoenas may be looming. House Intel Committee Chairman Devin Nunes is now calling on 10 Obama administration officials to testify regarding possible FISA abuse and the shady origins of the Russia witch hunt. Meanwhile, Nunes recently had some very strong words for his Democratic colleagues. Take a look.
Yeah, we're not going to be threatened by the Democrats. I mean, look, they're the ones that have all this blood on their hands. They're the ones who have completely destroyed the FBI and DOJ. How did they do that? They did that by digging up dirt. The Clinton campaign dug up dirt, put it into a dossier, fed it into the FBI, and the FBI used our counterintelligence capabilities against a political campaign. That's what happened here. So the Democrats in the House and the Senate, they've continued to want to obfuscate. They've continued to want to cover up. If it was, we listened to the Democrats, we would have never even found out that the Democrats and Hillary Clinton paid Christopher Steele to generate this dirt on President Trump. So I tend to ignore everything that they say. We continue to do our work day in and day out to get to the truth. And gradually we're getting to the truth. And I believe as these hearings take place and testimony is given to the Congress, I think it will be a much needed sunlight in this investigation.
Joining us now is Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz, American Conservative Union Chairman Matt Schlapp, and Civil Rights and Criminal Defense Attorney David Schoen. All right, good evening, gentlemen. Congressman Gaetz, I'm going to start with you. Underlying all of this, and the reason we're here is because we're finally getting the opportunity to see some of the documents, some of the text messages, some of the emails. And yet here we are in the middle of the summer, and we still don't have all of those requested documents from the DOJ and the FBI. What makes you guys think that Strzok is going to tell you anything and not claim the fifth?
It's not the answers he gives, it's the ones he doesn't that seem to interest me the most. I'm particularly interested in Peter Strzok's interactions with Robert Mueller after Mueller found out about these text messages. And I think we'll learn a lot about the lack of curiosity that Mueller had in determining whether or not the bias of Peter Strzok, actually manifested in the official actions of the investigation. Now, Peter Strzok at one point was America's top spy catcher, so don't expect him to crawl into the fetal position and begin weeping. He will have his side of the story. I think largely he was dishonest and very opaque in his answers in his closed-door session.
Okay, and Matt Schlapp, I mean, one of the things that you've been talking about is the fact that the Republicans haven't seemed to learn to step up and stand up for the president and for the party at large, or just kind of live and let live.
I think that we've really had a failure to understand. Republicans in Congress have had a failure to understand that oversight is one of the most critical things that they have to do constitutionally. They have the power of the purse. They fund these agencies. It's their job to make sure the money is being spent well. Judge, what we have seen with the abuses at the FBI make none of us happy because all of us respect the FBI. We know we need the FBI. But it's because we respect the FBI when we see this type of wrongdoing, we have to stand up and say enough. But as citizens, we're not empowered to do much. It's Congress that's empowered to do what needs to be done. And I tell you, the Republicans in Congress, is a real moment for them. They have to demonstrate to the country this had nothing to do with our national security in Russia. It has everything to do with never-Trumpers embedded at the top spots of the FBI in trying to impact that election, saying they will stop Donald Trump. If that is not enough for Republicans in Congress to say that they will take all the appropriate steps to end it, and DOJ has to do the same.
They're not doing it. You know what? I'm tired of asking them to do it, to tell, finding out, when are you going to do it? When are you going to hold them in contempt? When are you going to? David Schoen. Now, you know the system better than anyone. All right? You say that when Strzok testified behind closed doors, there should have been some preconditions. What were they?
Absolutely. First of all, we know from the Inspector General that we don't have a whole set of Strzok or Page's emails. We should have all of those. Congress must demand that they be produced. Judicial Watch is on to those kinds of things. But it's not just Strzok. Remember, what we didn't see in that Inspector General report was anyone at any point ever telling Strzok or his colleagues that their conduct was inappropriate. What I really want to see them get to is this meeting that Strzok told the IG about that he had with Page and with Andrew McCabe in McCabe's office, during which the agenda was Stop Trump. McCabe denies it, or he doesn't recall it. I want to get to the bottom of that.
So how do we get to the bottom
everybody's
of it,
got
David?
amnesia.
David, how do we get to the bottom of it?
Well, first of all, remember, Strzok's attorney has been boasting that Strzok is dying to testify openly at Congress, that he will testify, that he's an unfair victim here. One thing we know for sure is that there is no good answer to the emails that Strzok wrote. He's going to have to eat those. And that sets the agenda. And remember, that infected the whole process. You know, the IG found he can't determine whether bias infected the prosecutorial decisions. But remember, the prosecutor is only as good as the investigator. He or she makes his or her decisions on whether to prosecute based on the body of investigative material they're given. So people like Strzok decided what to go after, what not to go after, etc.
They're in an essential position. And Congressman Gates, you know, the frustration that I have and the viewers have is that, you know, there are some guys like you know, Jim Jordan and Ron DeSantis and Trey Gowdy most of the time. But we're not seeing a lot of action here. What can we expect as opposed to just saying bring him in?
Well, to my friend Matt Schlapp, I would point him to the comments of Rod Rosenstein on May 1st when he said that Congress has no constitutional role for oversight. Yeah. That's what we're fighting against.
That's
a Department of Justice that doesn't believe we have a right for oversight. It's outrageous. And frankly, it shows how important it is for the small group of us who've been really pounding the facts on this issue to get support from our leadership. You know how the Democrats will do oversight, Judge Jeanine? They'll say the damn documents will be there at 10 o'clock or your impeachment proceeding begins at 10:01. That's what we ought to do. We ought to demand the documents, or we ought to begin impeachment proceedings.
Congressman Gates, it's the leadership. Are we talking about Paul Ryan? Are we talking about Goodlatte? Are we talking about Mitch McConnell? Let's name them, because this is what the viewers and what the American people want. You can come on and talk all you want for the next 30 minutes, the next 30 days. If the leadership doesn't let you do it, then you can't do it. Am I right or wrong, Congressman?
You're right. I have been in Congress for about 18 months, Judge Jeanine, and I haven't entirely figured out this place yet, but I know that nothing happens unless the leadership wants it to happen. I am proud of Judiciary Chairman Bob Goodlatte for accelerating the schedule. I think we're going to have Comey and Lynch and Strzok and Page all giving public testimony very soon, and I'm encouraged by that. But from the Speaker's office on down, we need more support. Those of us who need the documents and who want to hold open hearings so the American people can see what happened.
All right, I'll go to Matt Schlapp. What kind of support is he talking about? I don't need someone's permission to ask for a document. We've got civil attorneys. We've got Tom Fitton who going to court and getting it on his own. Congress is that impotent?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. What the congressman just said is they can demand it, they can hold someone in contempt, and they can start impeachment proceedings. But the key is this, which is, at the end of the day, Judge, it's a political question. And the American people are watching. And if these congressmen, including Republicans, don't take these aggressive steps, they're going to throw people out of office, and there's a leadership race for the House to be the next speaker on the Republican side. Hopefully, we hold on to that majority. I think these types of decisions will impact that race. And finally, the DOJ is going to have to prosecute. If they don't prosecute, then none of this meant anything.
Well, and I agree, David, don't you? I mean, it seems that, and I think at one point Trey Gowdy may have said something like that. You know, I'm more interested in finding out the truth than, you know, the criminal consequences. Well, I'm a prosecutor. I'm interested in criminal consequences. I'm interested in setting the record. I'm interested in making a precedent for this. If you are at the upper echelon of the chief law enforcement agency in the nation, and it seems the whole top echelon was going in one direction for Hillary against Trump, then I have to believe the whole culture of the FBI, other than the regular guys in the field offices, there's a problem.
Look, it clearly reflects a culture. Let me say this. My father was an FBI agent. I grew up an FBI groupie. This is a huge blemish on the FBI. But it is a culture, and it also infects the prosecutors. Let me tell you this, Judge. This is one of the worst cases in the FBI, but I have the worst case of FBI corruption in the Eastern District of New York. And you know who the prosecutor was on that case? Andrew Weissman, the right-hand man of Mueller. So it's a culture here.
Yes.
And it shouldn't be a left or right issue. The American people, that's what's
right.
disappointing here for someone not politically sophisticated. The American people should demand transparency. There's not an investigation in which a source would be busted here, a real national security consequence if we expose this information. Listen, the presiding judge of the FISA court, Judge Collier, told Congress that they should ask the Justice Department for the FISA application documents. Now, look, I think the judge also should exercise her supervisory capacity.
Right.
Given the wrongdoing we know with those applications, the misleading and the omissions.
All right, I'll tell you
There's so
guys
much
what it
here.
comes down to, and I'll go to you, Congressman, and we only have a few seconds left. It comes down to a prosecutor. I don't need to hear about this with all due respect to you, Congressman. I don't need to hear about this in an open session. I don't need to read all these emails. I need a real prosecutor to get in there and find out what the truth is and whether or not everything they said and did, which indicates a negative intent toward Trump, is acted upon. And Rod Rosenstein's not going to do it, and Jeff Sessions isn't going to do it. So is there justice, Congressman Gates, in the end?
I don't think there will be if Jeff Sessions remains the Attorney General, and it is a sad thing to have to admit that, Judge Jeanine, but we have demanded a special prosecutor to make precisely the decisions that you just outlined, and Jeff Sessions has proven to be very captive to the deep state actors at the Department of Justice that seem to have him very flummoxed.
All right, last words, Matt Schlapp.
I'm more hopeful. I actually think the American people are appalled at this, and I actually think there are thousands of prosecutors at DOJ, and I think they're going to demand that something be done. If nobody is sitting in jail after this all happens, there's going to be a political revolt like we haven't seen for a long time.
But there's no prosecutor who can do it without Rod Rosenstein, who convinced Jeff Sessions to recuse himself, who doesn't have the political will, I'll be polite tonight, doesn't have the political will to go in there and put together a grand jury.
Well, maybe there'll be some changes. Maybe there'll be some changes.
No,
Go ahead,
You're
David.
right, Judge, and you know about prosecutors.
Yeah.
You know about prosecutors. Look, it has to change from the top. I don't say the president should have to be the bad guy, but there shouldn't even be this crisis with Congress and contempt. Rod Rosenstein has to be removed. Look, he's running the Mueller investigation.
Yeah.
We know how broad that has gone now. And he got cute with Jim Jordan the other day when he was asked who told Strzok he couldn't answer these questions. He said, look, you know, I've got 15,000 employees. I don't know. He's just one. That's nonsense. The focus is on Strzok, and the FBI director and everyone else ought to be mortified at what has been uncovered now.
Smart guy, David Schoen. Gentlemen, Congressman Matt Gaetz and Matt Schlapp, great segment. And coming up, we are less than a week away from President Trump's big announcement on who he's going to nominate for the Supreme Court. Ed Henry is here with an update on that. And then Tammy Bruce and Charlie Kirk. Stay right there. Welcome back to Hannity. In less than a week, President Trump will announce his pick for the Supreme Court. And today, the president met with more possible candidates after a call with Utah Senator Mike Lee yesterday. Joining us now with more on this is Fox News Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry. Ed?
Judge, great to see you. Breaking tonight, President Trump has now interviewed a total of 7 candidates for his second pick to the high court. As you noted, this pick will be officially unveiled next Monday, we believe, in prime time. New today, he interviewed 3 of those 7 candidates, including appellate court judges Joan Larson and Thomas Hardiman, as well as Utah Senator Mike Lee, who, as you noted, that interview conducted by phone. Before that interview, a few days back, the senator had told Fox's Shannon Bream he was honored to even be considered added today. I thought it went well. Very hard to predict, as in what the president will do in the end. Now, speaking at an event in West Virginia honoring military veterans ahead of 4th of July holiday, the president teased out the pick and promised a strong nominee to add to Justice Gorsuch. Watch.
This is such an important decision, and we're going to give you a great one.
We will use every tool at our disposal so the American people understand what's at stake here about the person who's nominated by the president.
I think that's the Democrats' message right now, which is oppose everything and do nothing. It's frankly gotten really sad that their party has no message, no leadership, no solutions, and they want to fight a president who's trying to lead and who's doing amazing things for our country and things that are really hard to argue with.
Sanders added again that there is no litmus test for the president on Roe v. Wade, instead saying that what he's focused on is a superior intellect, a strong adherence to the Constitution, a strict interpretation of the Constitution, as well as a strong judicial temperament. Sanders suggesting those are the tests the president wants these candidates to meet, Judge.
All right, Ed, thanks so much.
Good to see you.
All right, it's good to see you, too. Joining me now with a reaction from Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk, and Fox News contributor Tammy Bruce. All right, guys. I want to start with Mike Lee, and I'm going to start with you first, Tammy. I find it fascinating. I want to read the tea leaves here. The president says, quote, he's talking about Mike Lee, Senator Mike Lee. I actually saw him on television last night where he said he would love the job. You know, usually they don't say that, Mr. Trump said. Read the tea leaves, Tammy. What does that tell you?
Well, you'll recall Senator Lee was not very nice to the president during the campaign, but he's a good senator. He's well respected. His brother is also on the short list, who is also a judge. But the issue becomes, of course, one of the issues regarding if you remove someone from the Senate, and we have such a short list, yes, right? We have like one vote of ease. You don't want a special election where that could become a problem. Right. The general sense is that Mike Lee is not going to be chosen because of the problems associated with that. But you could make Senator Lee happy by choosing his brother, I suppose. And as a woman, as an advocate for women, it would be really fabulous to have a conservative woman on the bench.
We'll talk about that. But, Charlie, you know, the Mike Lee thing kind of surprised me. It's almost as though he's kind of pitching himself there, and you don't do that with the president. Yes?
Yeah, somewhat. You know, I'm a big Mike Lee fan. In fact, I think he's one of the more conservative people being put in this conversation that actually could get confirmed.
What do you think about the fact that he's, Charlie, what do you think about the fact he's never been a judge?
Well, look, I mean, he probably understands the Constitution better than every single left-wing person on the court right now. So I would say that. I mean, he's a student of history. He comes from, his father was a very high-ranking judge. His brother's on the short list. He understands the Constitution. He understands the rule of law. And look, in the Constitution, it does not say you have to be a judge. It doesn't have to say that you've ruled on cases. It doesn't even say there has to be 9 justices. So there is an argument to be made that if you pick someone out of the body of the Senate, it'll be very difficult for senators to vote against that individual. He could also vote for himself, which would be kind of unusual. But look, he loves the Constitution. He understands federalism, and he's very young.
But the last time someone was nominated to the United States Supreme Court who was not a judge, even a lower court judge, was, I think, a half century ago. It just doesn't happen. So the whole thing is,
we could put
very interesting. But there are so many. I'm sorry? Well, I didn't hear what you said, Charlie.
No, I said we could put you on the Supreme Court judge. I think that would be a great pick as well. Strong,
that's not what I'm looking for.
Well.
So I'm talking about someone who's never been a judge, and I think that's unusual. But let's talk about the women. Yeah. Tammy, you want to talk about the women. Now, Amy Coney, what is the last name? Yes, Barrett. Okay. Senator Dianne Feinstein gave her a very hard time about her Christianity, Catholicism.
This was just last year, so everyone will remember that horrible exchange where she was asking her, grilling her about her faith, which is not what you do. You can't make these decisions based on someone's religious convictions. And Ms. Barrett handled it very well. She was confirmed ultimately for the position she's in now.
Seventh Circuit.
Yes, for now about a year. So she's already been through that process. We already know what the Senate would do and what they would talk about. So that's interesting. She clerked for Judge Scalia, as did one of the other women on the short list as well. So they both have that experience. I would suggest, though, with Mike Lee, that the problem with him is being in the Senate. He's articulated many different positions already on the issues, some of which are controversial. That will not be helpful in that regard. It shouldn't matter, but it won't be helpful. But Ms. Barrett, she's already been through it. I think that gives her an edge that we already know what would happen in the Senate.
Yes, and Charlie, with respect to Judge Barrett, there are also a few Democrats who voted for her a year ago. So that makes a difference, too. But isn't it interesting, Charlie, that now the president is in a position of affecting the law precedent for a generation and changing the court? The Democrats are going bananas.
That's right. The Democrats are not, they're afraid that not that Trump is going to fail, they're afraid he's going to succeed. 1 out of 8 of all circuit court judges in America have already been appointed and implemented by President Trump. He's on pace to replace over half of the federal judiciary. It's absolutely remarkable. And this would give a permanent 5-4 conservative constitutional majority on the high court. And you saw the implication of this last week. Public sector unions will never be the same. The free speech court decision coming out of California in regards to the abortion facilities. And so President Trump to have 2 high court picks in just the first 2 years, it's absolutely phenomenal and stunning. Gorsuch was a home run, and I'm confident he's going to make another great selection here.
And with respect to the issue of choice, everyone is talking about choice as though it's the only issue that's at stake here.
Well, if I could add in that is when I was on the left, it was the only issue with which you could raise money. It is also an issue that they like to portray as existentially threatening. But the bottom line is, after all these years, it is never, with all the appointments and the Republican presidents and conservative judges appointed, it has never been an issue. It is precedent that is set. And this, I think, really is just one more element of the hysteria that the left is moving. The bottom line is Americans like what the president is doing. They like Judge Gorsuch. We know something's gone wrong with this country with the attitude that is perpetrated by liberals in the left. And we want reasonable, constitutionally based decisions. We know that improves everyone's lives.
Right.
And there's already a war on some of these judges, and the president just has to stay the course.
Charlie, what does the president do to get Democrats to come around if, of course, McCain's is not going to be voting, and we've got Collins and Murkowski, possibly just voting for pro-life?
Yeah, I think he has a better... Yeah, I think he has a better chance of getting Manchin and Donnelly than even Flake or Collins. I think a lot of these red state Democrats are going to have no choice but to come over and to vote for this pick, especially as we get up against the midterms here. It's going to be very difficult for some of these incumbent Democrats to go back to states where Trump won by 30 or 40 points and justify resisting a common sense constitutional selection to the Supreme Court. But President Trump has to do what he did tonight. Go straight to these states and advocate for this pick, for this selection, and make the argument straight to the people.
All right, Charlie Kirk. Tammy Bruce, thanks so much for being with us tonight. And coming up, President Trump is going after far-left Congresswoman Maxine Waters again after she said she's done with, quote, nice guy politics. Stay with us. Welcome back to Hannity. The rhetoric and tactics coming from the left have reached new lows. First, de facto Congress leader Maxine Waters called on everyone to harass Republicans wherever they go. Remember this?
You have members of your cabinet that are being booed out of restaurants, who have protesters taking up at their house, who's saying no peace, no sleep. And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
And now, according to The Hill, Maxine Waters is done with nice guy politics. Earlier today, President Trump tweeted about Congresswoman, writing, quote, crazy Maxine Waters, said by some to be one of the most corrupt people in politics, is rapidly becoming, together with Nancy Pelosi, the face of the Democrat Party. Her ranting and raving, even referring to herself as a wounded animal, will make people flee the Democrats. And while some top Democrats have actually called for ICE to be abolished, now a Nebraska GP office has been vandalized with its windows smashed and abolish ICE scrawled across the pavement in red spray paint. Earlier tonight, President Trump spoke about calls to abolish ICE.
And Border Patrol and all of these incredible people that you've been reading about who are doing an unreal job. We want border security. We want security in our country. We respect ICE. You know, ICE is the one. These are tough people. And then I hear Democrats saying, we want to abandon ICE. We want to abandon. We're not abandoning ICE, and we're not abandoning our law enforcement. Just the opposite.
Joining me now with reaction is former Secret Service agent and NRA TV contributor Dan Bongino, Fox News contributor, former Clinton pollster Doug Schoen, and author of the upcoming book Mad Politics, Keeping Your Sanity in a World Gone Crazy, member of the Donald Trump for President Media Advisory Board, Gina Loudon. All right, I'll start with you, Dan. What is happening to the left? I mean, sometimes I feel like, is it me or are these people, have they finally flipped their lid?
No, this is the Democrats for the last 20 years. This has been the Democrat Party. Now, they've been pretty good, Judge, over the last 20 years, politically, tactically speaking, of hiding who the left really is. Donald Trump has brought out from them in his refusal to apologize and his doubling down, which I like when he stands on principle, this anger and rage in them. And with this leftist ideology that is all about the acquisition of power, they've lost the House, they lost the Senate, they lost the presidency, they're now losing the battle for the courts. All they have is aggression and confrontation. This is just a natural outflow of their ideology. They just can't hide it anymore.
And Doug, you know, you're a Democrat. I mean, you worked with Democrats. You worked with the Clintons. Do you want to get rid of ICE?
No, not at all. Look, I have no problem if there are ways to look at improving ICE, potentially reforming it. But for goodness sake, we do need border security. And I'd be the first one to say that what we need is real immigration reform, border security, potentially the wall, in exchange for guaranteeing a pathway to citizenship for those here and protection for the dreamers. That's real immigration reform. It's demagoguery to say just get rid of ICE.
And you know what's interesting is I think the president offered that, the 1.8 million DACA, you know, the path to citizenship. All right, Gina Loudon. You're a psychologist. Are they nuts, or are people believing in this?
Well, I would certainly thank the sane people like Doug here who are Democrats. There are a lot of them left, by the way. They just get pushed aside because the leadership has acted so diabolically toward the American public. They have no issues. And the thing they never seem to want to think about is where their suggestions end. Exactly where does Maxine want this to end? Where is she willing to draw the line? Is there going to be another Steve Scalise? God forbid. But look what happened with Rand Paul this week. This gets scarier and scarier. This is very real to the people being threatened, and it needs to stop now.
And you know what? I think we've got some video of Scott Pruitt being approached in a restaurant, the EPA director.
This is my son. He loves animals. He loves clean air. He loves clean water. We deserve to have somebody at the EPA who actually does protect our environment, somebody who believes in climate change and takes it seriously for the benefit of all of us, including our children. So I would urge you to resign before your scandals push you out.
I can't imagine being at a restaurant and somebody coming up to me, I don't know, saying, I would urge you to resign before your scandals push you out. Dan Bongino?
Yeah, you know, to the Democrats out there watching, I don't know why you think this is helping. I mean, listen, I get it. I am absolutely unequivocally for the big R right to assemble and petition your government. The lady was peaceful. She didn't attack him. You know, that's fine. Do what you want to do. But what I don't understand is they're usually smarter than this. The Democrats have politically outmaneuvered us for a long time. Do you actually think this is helping? Confronting a guy in a restaurant while he's eating and telling him to resign? I mean, it just looks silly and foolish. Go do what the Tea Party did, organize, and win some elections. And this is just absurd. It's not helping.
You know, Doug, as I was watching Pruitt, I mean, he looked pretty, you know, didn't move him a bit. But, you know, you've got Pam Bondi, who's the Attorney General of Florida. They're spitting in her hair an inch from her face while she's in a movie theater. Sarah Sanders, Kirstjen Nielsen. What do you say?
Well, first, I'm a centrist. I believe in civility, compromise, and reasonable approaches to politics. And I wish I could disagree with Dan and Gina, but candidly, as a Democrat and as a patriot, I have to agree. This is ridiculous, counterproductive behavior. I wish they would just stop and act more like Connor Lamb, the newly elected congressman from Pennsylvania, in disavowing this kind of behavior. being willing to compromise and work with the president, and most of all, approaching things with civility, grace, and decency, putting America first.
And Gina, what do you say to women who are confronted like this? And it seems like it's not going to end. Confronted by the left, I mean, a woman who's alone. Pam Bondi was approached by guys. She's with her boyfriend, okay? But if you're alone in a restaurant, what do you say to women in a situation like this?
I really don't have answers for them other than I believe that this lies in the hands of the responsible party. For example, with the GOP that was vandalized, the GOP office that was vandalized, I believe it was just this week. How about the DNC offers to pay for the damage that was done? Let's start extending some hands. The president has offered, as you mentioned, path to citizenship for more than 1 million of the dreamers. So how about the other side starts to offer a hand, and we start to work together at least on the issues we can agree on, like the three of us have done here tonight on this panel, the four of us rather, which is a pretty good bipartisan mix.
All right, Gina Loudon, Dan Bongino, and Doug Schoen. Go ahead, one more. Go ahead. Did you want to say something, Dan? I have like 5 seconds.
No, it wasn't me. That was Doug. I cede the floor to Doug.
Yeah, I was saying it's 3-1, but we all can cooperate, we can all agree, and we build a better America by doing that.
Indeed, indeed.
Amen.
All right, still to come, we have big developments to tell you about concerning President Trump's meeting with NATO allies and his separate summit with Vladimir Putin, plus reaction from Daniel Hoffman and Sebastian Gorka. And if you want the real story into the Russia collusion, make sure to check out my book that is coming out on the 17th, Liars, Leakers, and Liberals, the case against the anti-Trump conspiracy, out in bookstores soon. Don't go anywhere. Welcome to Hannity. President Trump is making waves on the international stage and leading the world with a policy of peace through strength. The Washington Examiner is reporting President Trump and Defense Secretary Mattis are warning NATO allies to open their checkbooks ahead of next week's summit. According to a report obtained by The Hill, Trump is planning a one-on-one meeting with Putin without aides present. Plus, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is returning to North Korea. Joining me now with reaction, the author of the upcoming book, Why We Fight, Recovering America's Will to Win, Fox News national security strategist Sebastian Gorka, and retired CIA senior intelligence officer, Fox News contributor Daniel Hoffman. All right, let me ask you a question before I get into Putin. You know, the president is warning the NATO allies to open up their checkbook. Sebastian, how does that happen? I mean, what leverage does the president have on these guys other than insulting them to their face, which I liked he did a year ago?
Well, very simple, Judge. We have underwritten their defense since the Washington Treaty was signed in 1949. So we have capacities that we provide them. We provide intelligence. We have troops in many countries of the NATO nations. So it's a simple quid pro quo. You have to start paying for your own defenses for generations. They haven't even kept. Only 6 of the nations in NATO actually keep the promise of spending 2% of their GDP on their own defense. The rest of them are what are called freeloaders. They're just freeloaders. So if they don't start paying for their own defense in that gentleman's agreement, then we're going to have to pull some assets out.
All right, and Dan Hoffman, I want to talk about Putin now. You know, this meeting in Helsinki in Finland on the 16th, the president's meeting Putin alone for a short period of time, as I understand it, and then the other aides are going to be coming into the room. What do you think they'll be talking about alone?
Well, I'm sure that the president will be discussing just that with Secretary Pompeo, and I'm sure that Secretary Pompeo will brief the president and very carefully on the specific issues that they'll want to raise in a group setting and what might be helpful when they're one-on-one. Probably they'll do some rapport building when they're together. They're not really alone. There's 2 translators, and the room is probably mic'd up and being collected on by countless others. So I'm sure the president will be aware of that. Our intelligence community will warn him of that so that he doesn't.
Dan,
so he's more prepared.
The meeting is mic'd up. The room is mic'd up. What does that mean? There are bugs in there?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that there are those who will be listening who are not exactly in the room at the same time. That would be my assessment. Yes, ma'am.
Interesting. Okay. And then what about Pompeo? And I'll go back to you, Sebastian. Why does he keep going back and forth to North Korea? What is going on that requires him to go back and forth so much?
Well, as the NYPD would say, to keep the squeeze on their shoes, to make sure that they're actually following through. We had an incredible summit in Singapore. I was there with Sean's team. Daniel was there. The fact is now they have to produce. They have to start closing down their capabilities and allow us to have access. So that's why this man, who's former director of the CIA, former congressman on the Intel Committee, is making sure that this isn't just some kind of protocol deal, but that North Korea starts denuclearization.